My grandmother died on a Tuesday morning in October. I was holding her hand when it happened. I had been at that hospital for 11 days straight. My aunt had visited twice. 3 weeks after the funeral, I received a letter from a law firm I had never heard of. It informed me that my grandmother's estate, the house she had lived in for 47 years, her savings, her jewelry, everything, had been transferred to my aunt via a will signed 6 weeks before her death. I had never seen that will. Nobody in the family had, because my grandmother hadn't written it. This is the story of what happened next, and why my aunt lost everything on the same day she thought she had won. Stay with me. My grandmother's name was Eleanor. She was 81 years old when she died. Sharp until the very end. Sharper than most people half her age. She could recall exact dates, exact conversations, exact amounts of money she had lent to people decades ago. She had built her life carefully and deliberately. My grandfather had died when I was 7. After that, it was just her. In the house they had bought together in 1974, tending the garden, cooking Sunday dinners, being the fixed point around which our family orbited. I was close to her in the way that some grandchildren are close, not just affectionately, but genuinely. I visited every week. I drove her to appointments. I sat with her in the evenings and listened to stories I had already heard 20 times and never got tired of. My aunt, my mother's older sister, I'll call her Patricia, had a different relationship with Eleanor. Patricia lived 40 minutes away and managed to visit perhaps once a month. When she did visit, the conversations had a particular texture to them, always circling, eventually, toward money. How much had grandmother spent on repairs recently? Whether she had updated her accounts, what she planned to do with the house eventually. I noticed it. My grandmother noticed it too. She mentioned it to me once directly. Patricia loves me, but she loves what I have a little more. She said it without bitterness, just as a fact she had made her peace with. What Eleanor had told me, clearly, specifically, in a conversation I can still replay word for word, was that she intended to leave the house and her savings to me. Not because she loved Patricia less, but because I had been there, because she trusted me to honor the house, because she wanted it to go to someone who would keep it in the family the way she and my grandfather had intended. She had an appointment scheduled with her own lawyer for the 3rd week of November. She died on October 14th, 3 weeks before that appointment. When Eleanor was admitted to the hospital, I rearranged my entire life. I took emergency leave from work. I was there every day, sometimes sleeping in the chair beside her bed, sometimes driving home at 2 a.m. and coming back at 7. Patricia came twice. The first visit lasted 40 minutes. She brought flowers, spoke loudly the way people do when they're not sure if the patient can hear them, and left to meet a friend for lunch. The second visit was on a Tuesday, 9 days before my grandmother died. I wasn't there for that visit. I had gone home to shower and change. I was gone for 3 hours. That visit lasted 2 hours. I found out later, much later, what had happened during those 2 hours. But at the time, I came back to find my grandmother quieter than usual. When I asked if everything was okay, she said, "Patricia was here." And then she changed the subject. I didn't push. I should have pushed. The letter from the law firm arrived on a Thursday. I read it 3 times before I understood what it was saying. A will, signed 6 weeks before Eleanor's death. Leaving the house, the savings account, approximately $340,000, and all personal property to Patricia. I sat down on the floor of my kitchen, not because of the money, because of what the will meant. It meant that during those 2 hours when I had gone home to shower, Patricia had brought a document, and somehow, in a hospital room with an 81-year-old woman on medication, in the 9th day of a difficult hospitalization, that document had been signed. I called my grandmother's regular lawyer the next morning, the one she had worked with for 20 years, the one the November appointment had been scheduled with. He had not prepared that will. He had not seen it. He had not been informed of it. He was very quiet on the phone for a long moment, and then he said, "I think you should come in." What followed was 4 months of the most painstaking, frustrating, and ultimately clarifying process of my life. My grandmother's lawyer connected me with a litigation specialist. I will not go into every detail of those 4 months because some of it is still legally sensitive. But here is what the investigation established. The will had been prepared by a notary Patricia had hired privately. That notary had visited the hospital during my absence. The signature on the will, when examined by a forensic handwriting expert, showed characteristics consistent with someone signing under physical duress or diminished capacity. The medication my grandmother had been on at the time of signing was documented in her hospital chart. It included a sedative prescribed 2 days earlier. There were no independent witnesses to the signing who were not connected to Patricia. The notary, when contacted by our legal team, became very difficult to reach. And then, the detail that changed everything. A nurse on the ward remembered the visit. She remembered it specifically because Patricia had asked her to leave the room. The nurse had noted it in her personal log because it had struck her as unusual. She was willing to make a statement. 4 months and 11 days after my grandmother died, Patricia received a letter. I was not there when she opened it, but I was told about it afterward by a cousin who happened to be at Patricia's house at morning. The letter was from our legal team. It informed Patricia that we were filing a formal challenge to the validity of the will on grounds of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. It also informed her that we had a signed witness statement from the nurse, a forensic handwriting analysis, her financial records showing the notary payment, and hospital pharmacy records documenting the sedation. My cousin said Patricia read the letter and sat down very slowly in her kitchen chair. She didn't say anything for a long time. The case never went to trial. 3 weeks after that letter, Patricia's lawyer contacted ours. She returned the house. She returned the savings. She returned the jewelry. Every single thing, in exchange for us not pursuing criminal charges for fraud and elder abuse. We agreed. Not because she deserved that mercy, because my grandmother would not have wanted her sister to go to prison, even after everything. The house is mine now. I go there on Sundays sometimes. I sit in the garden my grandmother kept for 40 years, and I drink tea from the cups she bought in 1987, and I feel her everywhere in that space. That was what she wanted. That was what she had told me she wanted. Patricia and I have not spoken since. I don't expect we ever will. She lost more than the estate in those 4 months. She lost the respect of everyone in the family who found out what had happened. She lost relationships that had taken decades to build. I don't feel triumphant about that. I feel something quieter, a kind of sad clarity about who she turned out to be when something she wanted was close enough to reach. People reveal themselves in moments of greed the way they reveal themselves in moments of crisis. Completely. Honestly. Without the performance. What she revealed was not someone I can mourn. It was someone I had never actually known. If you are in a situation right now where something that belongs to you has been taken by someone who thought you wouldn't fight, fight. Not with anger, not with confrontation, with documentation, with patience, with the right people beside you. The truth about what Patricia did was always there. In the hospital records, in the notary's financial trail, in the nurse's memory. It just needed someone to go looking for it. Nobody gives you back what's yours. You have to go get it, quietly, methodically, without announcing it. And then one Thursday morning, a letter arrives at their door, and everything changes. New story every day. Subscribe so you never miss one. Just wait.